hitting the pavement about the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement, things like that. So, you know, I found some kindred souls there. It kind of brought me back. But one thing that I see that was common today to even what was happening 40 years ago is that people have specific causes they were shouting about, and I think that there's a lot of good reason for it. But what I also feel kind of on a soul level, on a heart level, is that really what this is about is something not that much more complicated than people are unhappy. Mm-hmm. You know, there's various reasons for being unhappy, but in this the spiritual lifestyle game, we want to see what the big picture is, and we want to see what the individual things, but we want to see the big picture. And the big picture is that you can actually feel people's unhappiness and their anger.
Yeah,
they're not, and I think to me what I feel is that people are generally, and the younger people are sensitive to this to an extent that a lot of people, they get older, they have jobs, they got to pay the bills, so their attention's all wrapped up in survival. But when you're younger, you know, you don't have a family, you know, to support you, so you got a little more time to kind of be sensitive to things that the people when they're older are a little tied up in. So what I'm feeling is there's a justified sensitivity that something is not right. Something's not right about how we are living. And sometimes the people aren't developed enough in life to actually be able to understand why, but they're reacting to something that is true, that something's not right, this life is not satisfying, the values, what they're being asked to go after, it does not feel authentic. Mm-hmm. And so justifiably their attention may be being directed at some of the things that seem to represent that, the corporations, the institutions, which I'm not saying that there's not justification for that, but actually to some of us there's even a bigger issue, and the bigger issue is that the entire lifestyle, the civilization, is not leading these people to self-awareness, joy, self-discovery. Rather, it's leading them into enslavement. Financially and emotionally and psychologically. So we're there actually to try to just help out as we can to help people make this inside connection, because even if a lot of these causes are taken care of, that still doesn't solve the big cause, and that's who am I, why I'm here, and how can I make a positive impact while I'm here.
Oh, I think there was an interesting word that you brought up, authenticity, as well as it reminds me of a quote that I just had a discussion with my dad recently, and he shared a quote with me. He said something like, he is always a slave is a man who cannot live simply. Mm-hmm. And the idea of simplicity, or what are the things that we're striving for today in terms of our goals, in terms of our what we're bombarded with, or what's celebrated today, the celebrity or the greatest money makers on the Forbes list, and these things that are thrown at us and become part of our media and our upbringing, that very little do you see about authenticity of values, or what are the important characteristics of commitment, for instance, and how does that then lead to a happier or more fulfilled life?
Yeah.
Right? And you're a big proponent. You always talk about spirituality in some ways is a kind of a loose term, and it can mean so many things to so many people. But you always hammer home for me is that it's 99% is about commitment. Mm-hmm. And that's the first road that we take towards our happiness, because that commitment in turn gives us the ability to grow our character. Which then gives us further values and dignity, and as well as a divine state or grace that leads to our happiness. So,
on that, and I think we've chatted about this before, this idea that the complexity that comes with life, that's there, I feel like it's surrounded us, but I feel like the younger generation now, people that are growing up in their 20s or even in their teens, I find some of the ones that I interact with are much more aware of who they are. And I think that that's where some of the friction is coming from. I think, of course, there's fundamental issues with the system. There's emerging poverty in our own country here in the U.S. There's many people that are unemployed. But I think, of course, the younger generation is also starting to realize that people can live a simple life. People can live a virtuous life. All of these characteristics that you all are sharing right now, I think, are starting to be recognized in the younger generation. And I think it's, for me at least, it's promising, because I feel like this movement that we're having is a deeper movement. It's sort of a spiritual revolution, if you will. And I feel like because there's an element of truth in that, the revolution itself, whether it's Occupy Wall Street or whatever it is, the friction has spread very quickly. We, of course, have heard of the Arab Spring and some of these other uprisings in other countries, but I think, you know, one of the most promising elements of the Occupy movement was how quickly that movement spread to so many different cities around the world. And I think that that's just one very small data point to show that I think people are starting to feel the lack of authenticity in our systems and the need to evolve them more broadly, whether they're government, whether they're corporation. And I think at the root of that is the appreciation and understanding of love and spirituality, and the need for that to be central to some of the for some of our goals essentially in life. Happiness, however we choose to label them. But I think people are also starting to realize that they're not as closely associated to monetary gain or financial gain as we used to think they were. And I think that our systems have been set up in such a way that the monetary gain was maximized.
Yeah.
Forbes list, for example.
Yeah.
You know, there are gods. You know, I went to business school myself, and you would look at that, and we always aspired to, you know, have a lot of dollars in our bank account.
Yeah.
But you know, now we always hear money doesn't make you happy, right? I mean, there's truth to that axiom as well.
Yeah. So I guess to pull it back a little bit to just actually being on the location wherever you are, whether it's, you know, here on the ground on Union Square or in the park, we're teaching yoga classes, and you know, how does that actually tie into these things that we're talking about? I mean, people sometimes don't. We're bringing something that's kind of been been tucked away into the yoga studios, and you have to pay quite a pretty penny some places to actually get the yogic teachings. And this is a 5,000-year-old language of the human body and mind. And so what we're trying to share with people is that they can begin to control their own self and their own mind, and through that to then change their reality and some of their perspective around what they're doing and who they are. It's a deep fundamental technology of self-growth and self-discipline. And I think discipline, when you hear about yoga, you often hear about it meaning union, or to yoke the mind and the body into one. But actually, if you get into the core of it, yoga really means discipline, and that's not something that a lot of people want to actually do, because that implies that they're going to have to work hard for their change. And we're never going to say that, and this is another great quote that I saw, it's not that it's going to be, we're not going to say it's going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it if you do it. Right?
We're going to cut to some footage of Zuccotti Park right now.
All right, so we're going to cut to Zuccotti Park for a few moments now.
Can we chat right now?
Yeah, can we chat over
I don't see anybody meditating.
Yeah.
You done? No. You cheater. I am not a cheater. I am not a cheater. Luke's cheating. I have to go pee, and now I have to make a phone call. I'm not a cheater. Right?
This is deducting from the amount of time.
No, it's not.
Humorous banter. How's it going?
I'm good, Hoster.
No, I'm just really tired.
How many hours are you doing now?
It's 15? 15th hour.
Think they want to arrest more people?
I don't know what's gonna happen, but we'll see. The guy was on the ground, and he was going like this, like pulling, like backwards crab walking, like as hard as he can to get away. And a cop walked up.
Yeah, we were noting that nobody was meditating there. But I wanted to, again, I think we'll keep coming back to this theme. At least this is a show about, actually, this is kind of, to me, more than just kind of yoga and Occupy Wall Street. To me, what this really is about spirituality and social activism.
Yeah.
This is a much broader concept that is universal and timeless. And again, kind of going back to what I was talking about before, what we see now, and this is why, you know, it's 11 o'clock, we're talking about why we're here, what our presence is, rather than talking about, you know, Chase Manhattan Bank in particular, is that, okay, so I'm there today. I feel anger. I feel anxiety from there. The people are venting and they're anxious. They can feel what's wrong, what's unjust. But the thing that I did not actually hear, and have yet to hear at any of these things, is really any long-term solution other than a Band-Aid. And so the Band-Aids are good too, and the people need to do that. I'm not devaluing that. But in the spiritual life, what we're looking for is to find some meaning and satisfaction to our life, and to be able to influence others and impact others in this way. So this is part of the whole package, in that we're representing some long-term answers. So in other words, people are not satisfied with their life. They're not satisfied with the life they feel they're forced to live. Spirituality actually is about liberation. That's actually what it is. If you actually study the teachings of all the great masters throughout all the paths, they're teaching a way of liberation. And of course, we don't have enough time to get it all into this, but of course, in many cases, the institution of religion, we've talked about this, the institution of religion itself often, it's supposed to be there to liberate, and actually is another enslavement. That's another conversation. But what really, to me, what the people are feeling there is they feel a sense of powerlessness, and they're venting out against those things that they feel are taking away their personal power, because they want to feel liberated, and they feel like they're enslaved and they have limited choices. And there's injustice around them that they feel powerless to address, other than yelling and screaming and this. So we're trying to validate those feelings, but also give people a way to feel free. And there's a way to do this, and it is within one's own self and how one conducts himself, and it's a very long discussion. But again, we're there joining hands with the people there because we agree that the way things are is not authentic, and it's not liberating. And for people to feel their evolution, that has to happen, and we feel, having walked this path ourselves, that there are options on how people can feel this sense of liberation.
You know, to your point about liberation, and also this idea of authenticity and discipline, these all seem to me to work very much together. You know, I arrived at Occupy Yoga after I'd already been going to the occupation at Zuccotti Park for, you know, a little bit. And I really tuned in, and I think a lot of us tuned in to an opportunity to, engage in something that we know brings us to center, that we know can help make us better tools of that which is at our core, which, some of us would say, I think most of us would agree, would be a loving, creative being, a light being. And so getting to that place amidst the police presence, amidst the yelling, amidst that anger, the whole fray of being alive and in the moment is really, really useful. Discipline doesn't sound exciting. It doesn't. It doesn't sound like candy. But what it does, in a moment like this, you can say, just like you can in your own life, well, I want to achieve X. So to get to X, I will do this. I will go to school so I can have a degree, whatever it is. And, a lot of people in this younger generation, too, may not have the opportunity for the degree, or at least they don't see it readily available. They may not see a lot of paths open to them. And so where do you go? Well, most of the teachers, I believe, have taught, you go inward. And going inward and finding strength and discipline is incredibly liberating. And in that sense, I've seen it be really helpful in various moments. And it's been helpful to me as well.
Yeah. It's an excellent point. I think, as we were chatting here, I was reflecting on, initially, actually, why haven't we seen a broader response to Occupy within governments or corporations or even the media? Everyone has been attempting to suppress it. And, if we truly live in a democracy, then we would embrace the conversation. And it's a bit of a disappointment, I think, that the policymakers don't truly live up to this badge that they wear so honorably and they claim to bring to other countries and nation states. And then, too, as you were speaking, I was reflecting on the tone of the movement. And movements can be contentious. We can see movements turn into riots. Or we can see the flip side of movements and be movements driven by love and passion and peace. The Gandhi movement, some would say the Dr. Martin Luther King movement. And I think the movements driven by love have an essence of truth in them. I think they bear the truth that we're speaking about today. I think they're longer-lasting movements. I think that when we reflect back on those movements, we can feel proud of the movements rather than perhaps maybe shame or maybe we could have done this a little bit differently. And I think, lastly, when we have a movement driven by love and passion and the authentic principles we're discussing today, I think that resonates and connects with people that don't yet show up to Zuccotti or to Union Square because they don't fully identify with the movement yet. They don't understand when they go to work and they have bills to pay why their fellow brothers and sisters are doing in Union Square. Mm-hmm. And that's the bond and the connection that I think a group like this and others within the movement can start to make, to start reaching out to say, well, you don't actually have to be in Union Square or Zuccotti, but you can carry the revolution within you every single day and find ways to incorporate that into our daily life as well.
One of the interesting things I find about the people who don't participate, for instance, they don't feel it's their cause. And getting back to this whole thing about religion, spirituality, and social activism, is that in this country, and many polls have validated this, that most people actually self-identify themselves as being religious, percentage-wise now, whether they're Hindu or Muslim or Protestants or Catholics. Most people deep down relate to this. And being a student of religion myself and the history of religion, and I'm talking about religion and spirituality as the same because I think regardless of how the institutions have evolved, originally the religions were very liberating. And if you study the history of virtually every religion, including especially Christianity, these things often were rooted in social activism. That if you study history, most of the great social justice movements were started by spiritual leaders, people who were very connected to their own essence. And if you look at the history of many of the great world religions, most of them were not just about, personal evolution. They were about actually caring for your fellow man. And they often, the spark that started a lot of these religious movements, and you could read it again, whether it's Christianity or Judaism or Sikhism, that if you study their history, the spark that actually gave birth to many of these things were a response to social injustice, that there was something that was intolerable in the way that people treated their fellow man, people who were conscious, selfless, and willing to sacrifice even their own life and their comfort to help the lot of their fellow man. This often was actually the birthing of the religion. And of course, we come from the Sikh faith. And, those who don't know about the Sikh faith, this was started by Guru Nanak. And Guru Nanak, 500 years ago, actually, this was absolutely revolutionary in its time, but Guru Nanak actually fought against the caste system. He fought against the treatment, the unequal treatment of women. And he was against the political oppression of the time. So if you didn't know that this was actually a man of God, you'd think that he was in Occupy Wall Street, And of course, I've read about Christianity. Of course, many of his teachings directly were addressing the injustices of the time. So actually, anybody who follows any faith and really goes into the heart of it can see that all these faiths were birthed out of the sensitivity and consciousness of an enlightened being who was not willing to stand silent in the presence of injustice to his fellow brother and sister. So once again, we have that opportunity to stand up against the inequalities and injustice that we see. And in doing this, actually, this is all part of our own liberation.
Yeah.
So for us on this particular path that especially you were born into, I'm in, and you're all studying, and other paths, that as you were saying, these yoga studios today, everybody's doing, the stretching, and it's very nice, and I'm sure they're very flexible, and they'll be able to fit in their casket when all's said and done. You can fold them up and put them in there. But that's actually, and I hate to, in the audience, insult you, as you're in headstand, but these are all wonderful practices, but I think you really need to understand that for us, spirituality is part and parcel with actually being a good citizen and standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves. This is part of our path, and I didn't always see it this way, but even if you read the life of Gandhi and all these people, a great personal sacrifice. They stood up for their fellow man, but they were able to do this because they could feel within themselves, they could actually feel the other person. So the other person was themselves.
Yeah.
So standing up for the other person is even standing up for yourself. So this is what we really want to do in spiritual life. At the end of the day, we want to be so in touch with ourselves, and there's ways of doing that. It's quite a path to get there. But at the end of the day, you want to be so in touch with yourself that you see everyone as your brother and sister. I do believe this is the teachings of all the great masters.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of some of that, the path that you're speaking of as well, and the practices that we teach, when I actually arrived on my first time in Zuccotti Park, one of the things that I really felt deep at its root was that people were speaking in a new language. And I had been on my spiritual path for 4 or 5 years now and quite immersed in it. I did my teacher training in yoga, and I went on all the spiritual retreats, and I had, the personal work done, and, I cried a bucket, and then I thought that I was, really there, and then the rug came out from under my feet, and I've been through all of it in a very short period of time, which is actually now just really the beginning again. And but one of the things I really felt coming from one of the spiritual retreats that we do a self-organized a summer solstice and a winter solstice where everyone works together as karma yogis, and we all serve each other food, we take care of stuff, we do the sanitation. And I walked into Sakoti Park and I saw this amazing parallel with these experiences that I had in these kind of retreats. And I really felt like it all clicked. Like it was just like they were brothers and sisters. There was a common language. There was compassion. There was brightness in people's eyes. There was love, understanding. People were serving food to each other, which at its very base is one of the most blessed things you can do, and the most healing things you can do is serve food to others. And the kitchen is a real foundation of the movement day in, day out. Even here in the studio, making sure that food arrives for people who are working, sustaining them. And it's also a big foundational part of Sikhism as well, where the langar meals are, there's a kitchen in India by the Golden Temple where they serve something like 40 to 50,000 people, if not more, every day, rotating food, which is totally free kitchens. So I saw all these amazing parallels, and the teachings of my teacher and your teacher as well, that service, compassion, he would scold his students and say, well, you guys are so satisfied with how many students you have. How many hospitals have you gone to? How many places have you gone to help another person? Have you gone to an elderly home and tried to share the yoga with them? Just to breathe, just to get in touch with themselves a little bit, to begin to realize that, I'm more than just what's coming out into me from the external world. And that started to really resonate with me, and I immediately recognized with a few other people who had also been on the same paths that, this was a place where people could really communicate in this way. And whether they have the language or whether they knew where the language was coming from, they understood it in their hearts. And this whole shift is part of a turn in the age, really, that we turning from a time where we valued information as something to keep and hold on to that we could then make other people pay for. And we're really shifting into this time from the Piscean to the Aquarian age now, where people understand that all of information is available now. We can turn on the internet and, at a click of a mouse, you can have everything you want. So the question is, what are you going to do with it? What can we do with it? And how can we do it? So people feel empowered in a way to help each other out. And you see it on a grassroots level in Occupy, but you see also the oppression of the system that we're in, which unfortunately is not really going to change in a significant way very quickly, because the system is, the people in the system are trapped by the system. And so it really starts with the government, is really complicit with everything that's happening, because the government is tremendously in debt. They need to sell and create a certain amount of money to come in to just pay for expenses every day. So they need to sell their bonds every day. So there's who sells the bonds for them? It's the banks and Wall Street. So when people go around protesting Wall Street and wonder why there haven't been any arrests or people put to trial for you're talking to the people who are selling the bonds for the government to survive. So if that falls out under it, and that's why they save the banks as well, is because the banks and the banks use their own connections to kind of eliminate their competition, so that there's only 4 big banks left now. But with that, it's like a system that is going to collapse on its own, because it's just always working on borrowed money. It's always working on borrowed time.
Yeah.
You're a systems guy, so that's your thing. You're a systems guy, so you talk about this. So I've been wanting to ask you about this anyhow. So you're a systems guy. So how do you? And I know that you feel that the present system is obsolete. Okay,
Yeah.
pretty broken. So you study this. How do you see things kind of evolving and system-wise to be congruent with the spiritual evolution of the planet and the consciousness?
So a couple thoughts come to mind. One is, I think the driver of some of this is we have a model right now that's based on competition, where we don't even realize it. Our countries are in competition, and in our countries are companies, and in our companies are people. And it's a model where we're all almost pitted against each other, and we're looking to rent, seek, or hoard because we're doing it for personal safety. I mean, as humans, as animals, we need to make sure we have enough nuts in our storage for hibernation for the winter. It's a very animalistic thing. But at some point, it starts to turn into an ego-driven thing, greed. Let's accumulate, and then even that's glorified. And now I'm talking about the individual level, but I think the two are so interconnected. And I think at a systems level, if we were to abstract away from an individual level, I think it needs to start with a universal understanding that there's enough for all of us. We need to first feel that peace of mind. You'll be taken care of. You'll be taken care of. Like we just need to be able to feel safe. But we don't feel entirely safe right now because we're not sure if we're going to have food, if we're going to have jobs, we're going to have these types of resources that are going to make us, at a very human level, feel comfortable, a roof over our heads. So I think if we started with that belief in mind, that would be a place to move to. I think the other thing that we need to really start to consider in our systems is the fact that we're essentially a global world now, and we interact globally, but our systems are all set up nationally. Some consider the division of nation-state an arbitrary division. What's the point? I mean, if you look at Africa, a place that geography I study, people criticize how national boundaries were drawn because they're not reflective of the tribes. And, it's thought the colonial powers that be came in and drew some artificial lines and boundaries. I think now, given trade and movement of goods and capital and people, I think we really need to start to engineer our systems with a global mindset. If we look at where the population demographics, for example, we know that the US and Western Europe have older demographics. We know places like Africa, Southeast Asia, they have younger demographics. Thinking 40, 50 years out, well, where's the working age population going to be? Who's going to support the older populations? So there's a lot of movement of people from certain countries. So we need to be considering these elements in our systems. Now, how do we evolve systems? So, this is a very difficult thing because, Fateh, as you pointed out rightly, people have a very vested interest in maintaining the systems as they stand. Yeah. And we have system limiting forces like lobbyists that say, okay, no, you've got to, do it this way or keep it this way. The doctors' lobby was quite strong for a number of years, limiting the entry of other workers and task shifting. Which is quite problematic for our system if it's not left to be fluid over time. I don't have a coherent answer to say, okay, well, this is exactly what we need to do to evolve our current systems. I do know that evolution of systems typically happens with one step in the present and then one step in the future. So we typically evolve away from where we're at. It's very difficult to make a drastic shift from what we're doing to something brand new. I think people are very hesitant to make those types of drastic shifts. But I think what we need to do then is we need to throw some sort of a benchmark out to say, okay, this is where we're generally moving towards. Now, nation states have typically used GDP, gross domestic product, gross national product, as our benchmark, and we've worked to maximize that over time. Coming back to this idea of let's maximize capital, let's maximize money. Money hopefully should equal happiness, no? Not really. And so now there's this new movement around gross national happiness, started by the government of Bhutan years ago, and now there's conferences at the UN. Nicolas Sarkozy is doing a study of this for something like 20, 30 nation states. So, I mean, I think starting with the end in mind, being able to work backwards. If it was gross national spirituality in the language that we're using today, gross national love, if that became the benchmark, some universal truth at least that we could agree to a little bit more strongly than financial, we at least would have a direction to send our systems in. And then we would make slow changes. But I think the pace of our changes is also quite important as well. I think, coming back to this thought about lobbies, right, and interest-moving systems in particular directions, I think we need to come up with tools that allow us to evolve our systems quickly in the direction of our goal, whether it's gross national spirituality or happiness. So those are some thoughts, but not a very coherent response of 1, 2, and 3, and we'll get it done.
Which is a lot of what we have. And that's really, I think, maybe when you think about evolving a system, if systems do evolve themselves, they are living beings at some way, right? And we watch them and we predict, but we don't always know exactly where they'll go. And I'm not a specialist, so correct me if I am wrong. But that is one of the things about the Occupy movement. And it creates space. And it creates a space for something to occur. And that, I think, is also true of the spiritual space that it creates. People can come in and dialogue, and they can speak about economics, and they can speak about politics. But at the core, maybe to what Harinam was saying before, these are all products of our unhappiness. And so as we get back to, how do we get to happiness? Well, we dialogue. We dialogue with each other, we dialogue with ourselves. And I think that's one of the really great things that we can see in the Occupy Yoga, in the meditation group, in all of the various groups and peoples, individuals who do show up and say, I don't know where this is going exactly, but, and then the action begins.
I think what I see very interestingly enough now is that you have people in Zuccotti Park and those kind of places, but actually, I believe this thing is happening on a much wider level. And actually, I'm not even sure that's what I'm seeing in the park is even totally representative. It is like the most kind of outrageous expression of it. But I've had a number of interesting things happen just in day-to-day life that would indicate this to me. There's somebody in my life, I'm not going to say who it is because they could kill me later on for exposing him on, well, not national TV, but public access TV. But I had a very interesting conversation with somebody who I would consider, even in their estimations, a pretty straight person, not really taking care of the family, going to work. And I had told this person that I was teaching yoga at this thing. And I said, what are you doing there? What the hell are you doing there? That's crazy. Because they see these little blurbs on the TV, and they think I'm just hanging out with the homeless people, eating the food in the food line. They couldn't kind of put this together.
Yeah. So
I'm going, well, what do you think that whole thing is about?
Yeah.
And she's going, well, the people just, they want a job. Mm-hmm. Well, there's some people like that, but actually there's all kinds of people there who, I can't even tell you what they want because people are all over the place. So you think it's just about people wanting a job. Yeah. I've been there. I still trying to figure it out. But I said to her, but you know what, from my point of view, really what's happening, and actually I think it's going to grow, is that what it is it's kind of like a pimple, It's kind of coming like this, where it's kind of a symptom that people aren't happy with their life. So then she goes, well, I'm going, are you happy with your life? You like working 12 hours a day and not sleeping and hardly being able to pay your bills? And what do you do to relax? Well, I don't really relax, What were you put on this planet for? I really don't don't know. Are you tired of this? She said, I've been tired of this for 20 years. Oh, so like you're part of the movement. I said, that's what this is about. I'm going, you're not happy with your life. Welcome aboard. And you're not happy with how things are because I remember when we were 20, this is not what you had in mind. And look at it. I'm going, and you're a millionaire. Too bad you don't have time to enjoy it. So, you know, maybe there's a better way to live because you don't have much time. And she's going, and it was really interesting because she said to me, I really have to make some changes. And so this is really what this is about, and this is affecting everybody. And you know, I'm a crazy guy, so you know, we go to Zuccotti, we went to the May Day thing, but I like a lot of things, so I dragged this guy into a sports bar to watch a hockey game. So between people think that I just meditate all day, but no, we were May Day. We go to watch hockey in a sports bar, and now we're on television. Yeah. So, but I thought this was a very good sign because, you know, we were in this sports bar. We've got a waitress in a sports bar. I started talking to this waitress, and it was really, she's a 20-something person, but she's just trying to make a living. She's not out there, she's got to pay her bill, you know? So, but we're talking, and she's telling me that, that how important it is in this life to have values and how much gratitude she has to have a family that have love and teaches her that there's right and wrong in life, and that even in her short life she has had great disappointment and tragedy, but she really is grateful that she has something deep down that she can believe in. That's a lot. Yeah. And if there are people like this, then there's always hope.
Yeah. You know, as you're speaking, one thing that that came to my mind is I'm surprised by how little education there is from whether it's the education system, wherever we're meant to receive it, on being a human, on what it means to be a good parent. Exactly to your point here, you know, she mentioned her family, having a loving, supporting family, whether it's at an individual level, understanding how to interact with others. You know, you would think that how to consume, how to manage your own ego, how to manage the space that you take. And, you know, I think being able to embed this type of education into our system at some point, I think would go a long way into curbing some of the issues that we're seeing now. Because you would hope that some of the people who are perhaps greedier or looking to take advantage of the system or control others would have had that education earlier in life.
Right, especially since, you know, we really are the other person, right?
Yeah.
So any hope we have for them is the hope we have for ourselves. You know, we are all complicit in the system. And that's a really important thing for me personally to remind myself, you know, is that, because that's humbling in a really productive way, I find.
Definitely.
Yeah. And we're all related. We're not just the only other person, but we're related in so many different ways.
One of the things I wanted to, because we only have a couple of minutes, and I just kind of want to put in a big spiritual plug here for all spiritually oriented people, is that at the end of the day, in this short life, we all want to be able to feel that part of ourselves that's infinite. That it's very important in this short life that we know who we are, that we're put here for a reason. We know what that reason is, and that we can be so connected to that we can be an inspiration to our fellow person. And directly or indirectly, this is what everybody really wants more than anything else, and is angry at the things that are getting in the way of that happening. And so hopefully we can be of inspiration to help bring these people to where they need to be.
If there's one thing that you could share with someone who is, say, curious about what we're talking about, or you said plug for the spiritual, but for someone, and I feel like everything about the movement is actually spiritual. There are people who are kind of searching for a better future. They're searching for more connection with people. They're having greater compassion, and they're finding ways to get in touch with the unknown, which is something that they're striving for that's out there, and they feel that if there's, we got a minute left, if there's one thing that anyone can do on a say a daily basis or just a way.
It's the same for every human. Ask yourself the basic, most important question is, why am I here? And then go about doing the things that you need to do intuitively to get that answer. Whether that's reading, seeking other people who are asking that same question, because this is really the question upon which everything else is built upon. Why am I here?
Okay. Great. So thank you, Zoravar, Harinam Singh Khalsa, Mariette, and myself, Fateh. Thank you to everyone out there, Satnam, and
Love
Happy
you,
May
bless
Day.
you, happy May Day.
We want to thank you guys
Bless
for coming.
you.
We want to thank all of our guests today. We've had quite a long day today.
I bet.
15 hours of live broadcasting.
Oh, wow.
It's enough to make you go crazy.
We especially want to thank everybody here at MNN for giving us this chance to do this.
This is a wonderful opportunity. Thanks for letting us occupy the public access.
Yeah.
To those out on the street, we're the reason you are the reason we are here today. We thank you for going out there.
Getting arrested for us.
Some of us, yep, and also for covering. We had some great footage. Thanks to Timcast. Thanks to OOWS HD TV. Thanks to Los Angeles Occupy. Thanks to Portland, Chicago, Minneapolis, San Francisco.
Toronto.
We appreciate you. Thank you very much. And also, we'd like to thank Ananda and Zenaida and everyone else, all the MNN crew, the regular Occupy NewsHour crew.
Every Thursday morning, 9 a.m.?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Our next show is Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Be there or be square. And viewers, thanks for watching. Thanks for staying on air with us all day. It was a really a great day.
I had a great time. It was really, I learned a lot today.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Occupy
thank you, guys.
all day, all week.
Yeah.
Occupy Wall Street. Thanks for staying tuned, guys.
Occupy your life.
Occupy your life.
Occupy
Very
your
well.
life.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Hearing that those who have been arrested are being taken directly to One Police Plaza. A few more minutes until something happens.